Melissa was in the nursery coding, and they airlifted her from St. Mary's to Children's Hospital. Fortunately, my pediatrician was a great doctor, and he said he noticed it by seeing her day 1, 2, and 3, and noticed that her liver was in a different spot. When we got to Children's Hospital, they told my husband and I it could be a number of things. And they said they'd have to do a whole day of testing. Well, they did a whole day of testing, and it came back she had severe hypoplastic left heart syndrome. At that time, my husband and I were given 2 options: heart transplant or let her go. It was an easy decision. We're very pro-life, so we decided for the heart transplant. She was at Children's on her 3rd day. They listed her on her 4th day, and our prayers were answered. On her 10th day of life, Melissa received a heart from a baby in Dallas. And as I mentioned, Melissa was the youngest at that time. I did a little bit of PowerPoint presentation to kind of walk you through her remarkable story. Yes. Because like I said, Melissa doesn't remember the early days. Okay, like I said, she was born August 15th, 1990, St. Louis, Missouri, with a hypoplastic left heart syndrome. She received a heart transplant at 10 days old. She was the youngest in the nation. She was actually the pioneer for pediatric heart transplantation. She had a lot of unique and challenging episodes after the hospital stay. One, when she was 2 weeks old, she went into renal failure. The doctors never experienced this before because they never had a baby, and they had to put her on cyclosporin, and it totally shut down her kidneys. Then they told my husband and I that they'd have to start peritoneal dialysis. They started peritoneal dialysis, and she coded in the operating room because it's the first time they ever did it. They never did peritoneal dialysis on a baby, and they had a lot of problems with all of her water weight and the anesthesia, so they had to stop the procedure. And they didn't know what to do, so they waited till the next day. And also at that time, my husband was in St. John's with pneumonia, so I was left there by myself. So it was a pretty bad time. And that was on September 11th. I remember everything. So she, the following day, September 13th, they decided they had no choice but to start the peritoneal dialysis because she had like 12 pounds of fluid on her, and she wasn't breathing well. It was creating a lot of havoc. So they had to do the peritoneal dialysis via an epidural, and that was successful. So, like I said, her early years of life were very, very challenging. She also never ate. To this day, the doctors have changed their protocol. She wouldn't suck, she wouldn't breastfeed, and they said it was just because she was so sick. And then the peritoneal dialysis was filling her peritoneal cavity, making her full. And the longer that you're tube fed, the less likely you are to eat. Melissa didn't eat until she was in 1st grade, 8 years old. So my husband and I, we took her home after 3 months. We were tired of being at Children's. Luckily, from day 1, my husband and I we wanted to be there with her all the time. We had 2 other little kids at home. We had a 4-year-old, my oldest was a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So that was very difficult. My husband's insurance maxed out completely, so I had to keep on working to keep the medical coverage going. But we were determined to be there with our daughter, to be an advocate. Luckily, I worked nights, my husband worked days. So we were at the hospital for over 3 months. We finally approached the doctors and said, you know what, we're involved in her care, we want to take her home. We think that it's best that she get home. Well, the doctors didn't really appreciate that. They thought we were crazy. They didn't want no part of it. We persisted, and we took her home on peritoneal dialysis, oxygen, feeding tube, and numerous meds. Then, after, with a transplant, as you guys know, you are susceptible to viruses. Her young years with being on peritoneal dialysis and being on a vent, she spent a long time on the vent, She developed a lot of pneumonias, collapsed lungs, so her lungs were her Achilles heel. She had a lot of problems with her lungs, so she spent a lot of time after infancy to early childhood in and out of the hospital with pneumonias. Then when we thought everything was smooth sailing, at 16, her kidneys completely failed due to cyclosporine toxicity. So at 16, I donated my kidney to Melissa. However, shortly thereafter, a virus attacked that kidney and destroyed it. Again, I was an advocate, and I searched the nation for 9 months, trying to find a live kidney donor. I did a lot of things. I did this PowerPoint presentation, put it online, I did flyers, I did business cards, and fortunately, a 23-year-old girl from Chicago heard our story and donated. And I'll pass it over to Melissa because now at 20, when Melissa was 16, she now remembers the rest of her journey.
Hi, I'm Melissa. There is some hard stuff that I do remember. I mean, no specifics on like the medical stuff and whatever, but I remember growing up and not eating, and my parents would be like, all right, just 5 more bites, just 5 more bites. And I couldn't even do that, and they would get so frustrated they would leave, and I would be at the dinner table for an extra half an hour, and I would just throw my food away like as soon as they left. I basically learned all the tricks of the trade of trying to get rid of my food, pretty much. I remember grade school was tough because I was in and out. I know in 2nd grade I was out for at least a month. I want to say longer than that. That's when my lung shut down and collapsed. But like I said, well, actually, like my mom said, when I was 16, I found out that my kidney was failing. And I actually remember it pretty good. I had just got my cardiac cath. I was in the bed at Children's. Dr. Canner took my parents outside, and that's when you know, because Dr. Canner's not shy about saying nothing to his patients, so I knew it wasn't anything that I was going to like. So he took my parents outside and told them, and then he came in, he's like, well, your kidney's pretty much shot, time for another transplant. He said it pretty much like that. I don't remember word for word, but that's Canner. He doesn't care who he hurts or what he says or anything like that. So sophomore year of high school, I just remember I got to be gone from Thanksgiving to the first term in January because I had my transplant, well, my mom's transplant on October 24th of 2006. I remember I came home from the hospital on October 31st. I believe I got a little sick after the transplant, which is no surprise with me. It's always something. Came back to school, felt great, had tons of energy. I remember before the transplant, really before Canner even told me that, my kidneys were failing, I knew something wasn't right. I mean, that's just something that, as a patient for years on end, I mean, I very much believe that no one knows your body better than you do. There's been times where I've told the doctor what's wrong myself, and they come back and they're like, yeah, that's what it was. Even before he told me, I knew that I just wasn't myself, and within a matter of hours after getting my mom's kidney, it was definitely a different story. And then I had my other transplant in 2010, but before I got the transplant, I got done with high school in 2009, and I remember going away on vacation with my dad, and I remember I noticed that my legs were swelling, my feet were swelling, but I didn't want to tell him because I knew that if he knew, I'd be on the first trip back home, which is what happened once he did find out. I remember being at the water park, and my dad parked as far away as possible because he wanted us to get exercise, and it was probably the toughest thing I did in my life, just walking from the car to the water park because I had no energy whatsoever. My legs were swollen, well, not swollen, but I could still feel, the water pressure in them and everything. And I remember he did find out. I'm not sure how he did, because I knew I didn't tell him, but I think, being a dad and growing up with me and all I've been through, he kind of knew on his own. I didn't have to tell him. But I remember being in the car ride home, and he's talking to my mom and talking to my nurse coordinators and all that kind of stuff, and I just knew that it was no good. And I remember we came home and we went straight to Children's, and that's when I went into surgery. Well, not even surgery, because it was same day surgery right there in the room, and they did the peritoneal dialysis again, catheter. And I remember getting trained on how to do that myself. Well, because actually my first transplant from my mom, my first kidney, that was done through hemo down at Children's. And that's why that's while I was going to high school. I would go to school, drive to Children's, get hemodialysis for about 3 to 4 hours, come home, and I would really only be fine for like the trip home, and then I'd be exhausted again. And go home, hit my bed, and do it all again in another day, 2 days, because I would have treatment on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. But anyway, back to that. And then when my mom's kidney failed, and they did the peritoneal dialysis, I remember I was all set to go to Quincy for college, and my doctors were like, "You're not going anywhere." And that was hard to hear, because if you know me, I'm stubborn. I don't like to listen to the doctors. I don't always do what they tell me to do. But so I stayed at home. I went to school at Flow Valley, did my first year there. Got pretty good grades considering I was doing dialysis every night. And finally, with some arm twisting, I got them to let me go. And my first semester there, actually, I believe it was my first semester there, I get a call from the doctor up in Chicago saying, "We found a kidney for you, come to Chicago." Well, I wasn't even at school. I was in Indianapolis on a mission trip, and my parents were in San Diego for my sister's softball team. So I was like, "You want me to come to Chicago like now?" My parents are in San Diego. I came down here with a group of girls from school. I didn't even drive myself. And this doctor, he was very intense and fast-paced, and he just, he was like, "All right, let's go, let's go, let's go." And I was like, "You don't know what you're asking of me, buddy. You're asking for a miracle, and I can't give it to you." So I stayed down for the remainder of my mission trip. I came back up to school. The second I got to school, I went in my dorm, packed my bag, got in my car, drove home to St. Louis. My parents and I drove up to Chicago. We were in Chicago the next morning. Got there, was in the surgery waiting room area. And the room right next door to me, which we didn't know at the time, was my donor's room. She was in there with her parents, waiting to go in for her surgery to get her kidney out to give to me. And as you can see, that transplant went successful. I've had that kidney for 4 years. As of this March was my 4-year anniversary for that kidney, and been going strong ever since. And like my mom said, Friday I turned 24, and this Monday will be my 24 years out on my heart transplant. So another big milestone.
Okay, she already mentioned all that. The college. Okay. Next one.
Well, another thing that happened too, after I came back up to school, after I got my transplant, I came back for the spring semester, and in, when was it?
March 10th of 2010.
Yes, in March 10 of...
No, 10/10, October 10th.
Yeah.
10/10. 10/10.
Yeah, I was like, that's when I had a transplant. I'm like, cool. So I came back up to school. I was up there for August and September, everything was going fine, great, making good grades, all that kind of good stuff. And one weekend, I got sick, and it was, from what it seemed, just a regular stomach flu virus thing. I did my transplant duties. I called my coordinator. I was like, hey, I have been feeling good. I am going to the bathroom. It's not coming out right. What should I do? And she's like, just keep doing everything you're doing, because I was drinking my water, taking the meds, and all that kind of stuff. Next thing I know, I wake up and I'm no longer in school at Quincy. I'm in a hospital bed in Children's Hospital, where the doctor's asking if I knew where I was, and without even having to think, I was like, I'm at Children's. I don't know why, but I'm at Children's. Turns out that little stomach virus was a lot more wickeder than anyone would have hoped. If you guys didn't know this, this is a great tip for all of you. If you get a stomach virus of any kind, don't just drink water. That was my mistake. When you get a stomach virus, you're losing all of your electrolytes, your sodiums, all your good stuff like that. And drinking the water just makes it worse because it's not helping you put all that stuff back into your body. Well, that's what happened to me. By drinking all that water, I wasn't putting anything back into my body, and basically my system crashed and melted down. And from what I've been told, I obviously don't remember because it was a coma, I had a seizure. The seizure caused me to fall off my bed, under my bed. And luckily, the night before, I had told my friends that I had not been feeling good. And so they came to check on me, and they were knocking and banging on the door and everything. And when I didn't answer, they got concerned. So they got someone to unlock my door, and they found me under my bed having like a seizure. And they called 911, and they sent me to the local hospital there. Well, the local hospital covered all the bases, but they've never seen a case like me, which I wasn't surprised by. And so my uncle, who doesn't live too far from Quincy, came down, and he rode with me in the chopper to Children's. And like I said, I woke up, and there was doctors asking me if I knew where I was, and I didn't even have to think about it. I knew right away. And I just had all my parents and my family, ask me if I knew what happened, if I remembered anything, and I was like, no, I still don't remember anything. This is all hearsay of what they tell me. So that was a pretty wicked experience as well to go along with everything else that has happened. So just a little side note story there. But anyway, that's it.
And this is kind of, for any of you, just to educate you, trying to find a live kidney, because when Melissa needed her kidney transplant, my husband and I, we didn't even want to try for the cadaver kidney. As you know, the waits are very long, you don't really know what you're getting. The surgery that I had, laparoscopic surgery at Barnes, I was in the hospital 2 days. It was the easiest surgery I've ever done. And very rewarding, very grateful. So my husband and I were determined to find this live kidney. And like I said, I did a lot of things to find the live kidney. I did this PowerPoint presentation I put on the internet, I made business cards, I made that flyer, I went to shopping malls, handed them out to people, twofold, to educate everybody on organ awareness and organ donation, and secondly, to find a match. Because everybody in our family got tested and they weren't a match. So finally I connected with this guy, Garrett Hill. He's in New York, and his daughter needed a kidney transplant, and he was getting frustrated. He's a millionaire, and he was frustrated because he sent his daughter all over the United States, to every center he could think of, to try to get that kidney. Could never find a match. So he started an organization called the National Kidney Registry. And I connected with Garrett, and Garrett was the one that told me, Mary, you may want to go up to Loyola, because Children's, and I don't want to say anything negative about Barnes. I love Children's dearly, but at that time Melissa was 18, and they said Children's said they no longer would take care of her kidney. She had to do the kidney at Barnes. Barnes knew of her situation. They knew she was very precarious. She was already a heart transplant, already had one kidney, and needed a second kidney. Barnes told my husband and I, just sit back and wait. Well, that's one thing I really want to emphasize to everybody, that my husband and I are very strong advocates, and we get involved in her care. And we don't get intimidated by the doctors. Melissa doesn't get intimidated by the doctors. Actually, she calls Dr. Cantor Dr. Ass. Right to his face. You can't let doctors intimidate you. You have to be your own advocate. You have to ask questions. You have to be assertive. Had I taken the information from Barnes and sit back and wait, there wasn't an option. So I connected with Garrett. Garrett said, and Garrett was aware of it. And Garrett said, Mary, I had contacted Barnes, asking Barnes to get in my program. They wanted nothing to do with me. When Garrett contacted the surgeon at Barnes, they said, we're aware of Melissa Klein's. She's just going to have to wait. Garrett told me to go to Loyola. He said there was a very compassionate surgeon at Loyola. So I said, okay, we're going to Loyola. Dr. Milner, who was a compassionate surgeon at Loyola, he had this girl, Cindy, 23 years old. She wanted to give her kidney to a friend of her mother's who needed a kidney transplant. Dr. Milner came to Cindy and said, Cindy, what was the guy's, Robert?
Yeah.
We will find Robert a kidney. If you will donate your kidney to Melissa, because Melissa had a high PRA, Melissa only had a 4% chance of finding a compatible kidney. Because when you go for kidney transplants, you have PRAs, percent of reactive antibodies. She only had a 4% chance. Dr. Milner told Cindy, Cindy, if you will give your kidney to Melissa, we will guarantee Robert will get a kidney. So Cindy did. And it was amazing because when we were in the operating room, Cindy was the only child. Her parents,
You were in the operating room?
not the operating, the holding area. Cindy was the only child, never talked to her parents about organ donation. Her parents freaked out. Her parents wanted nothing to do with it. Her parents were fighting her. And Cindy said she came very close to not donating because she was getting so much static from her parents, her family, her cousins. Why are you going to do that? Why are you going to have surgery to help somebody? Why? And Cindy said she prayed about it, and she said, nope, I'm going to do it. And we get to Loyola, and we're in the holding area, and my husband and I walked by, and we saw this girl there, and I told my husband, I said,